just glug, 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 pour a tumbler of some scotch and just sit there and drink it all day.
That's not super enjoyable for me.
I don't get it. Like, I know I watched Mad Men a lot recently because I never saw it. And I'm watching that, and my dad watched an episode one time. Yeah, and he's like, that's how it was. I'm like, how? Like, how do you guys drink that much? Because you just fucking drink it. I'm like, dude, that is just straight booze.
The one thing about Scotch, though, is once you get on the Scotch train and you start feeling good on it, it's tough not to keep drinking until the whole bottle's gone. I've gotten on that train before, the Scotch train.
So the problem, though, is we like to drink wine, and you start drinking bottle after bottle after bottle, and then you switch to a glass of Scotch, and the next day you're like, what the fuck hit me?
Yeah. I don't know. I think I found that I just love peaty Scotch, and that shit is so expensive that I really just can't get anything else, which isn't bad.
So which one do you want to start with?
It doesn't matter. They're like, as I mentioned before, all three of these wineries are within literally 2 square miles of each other on Howell Mountain. So it doesn't matter.
Oh yeah, and by the way, I just hit play and we just start talking. So I mean, technically, it's already recording.
Whatever.
I'll cut it wherever we want to cut it, but that's kind of how we do it.
Start off with the Scotch side of that.
Totally.
No, this would be a fun episode, man. An entire Howell Mountain cabs.
I'll be honest, I don't know a lot about Howell Mountain.
You know what? It's funny because, so Napa obviously has all these delineated AVAs, right, over the years. Howell Mountain was like one of the first ones. Like it was separated from Napa in like 83. The first, I think, appellation that separated itself as a sub-appellation was Carneros. But Carneros obviously shares itself with Sonoma County too. So the first real Napa AVA, sub-AVA, was Howell. And what makes Howell and why they separated it from the rest of Napa Valley is because it's above the fog line. So everything that's below the fog line can't technically be categorized as Howell Mountain. So at 1,400 feet is where kind of the fog line is, and everything above that is considered to be Howell. So there's these badass wineries that are kind of like in the middle, but they're still on the mountain, like Villader and Burgess and Bremer, and like they got like screwed out of the Howell Mountain appellation by like a couple hundred feet.
But can they just buy fruit and be? Obviously they could
buy fruit from up there, but but
the winery's not on Howell Mountain.
Their estate vineyards are not part of Howell, even though it's on the actual same mountain.
Do they then technically fall into St. Helena, or are they still
it's
Napa?
Just Napa AVA.
Yeah, that sucks. So they got screwed out of everything.
Too. Yeah, they're trying.
It's like people on Pritchard Hill.
A couple of those producers are trying to come together and like create their own little sub-appellation, but there's some pushback from
Howell Mountain Light.
But one of the things
Howell Mountain Light, right?
One of the things I was reading, it said that to qualify for the AVA, you have to be 1,400 feet above 1,400 feet, which is 420 meters,
which is above the fog. So
Damien, this is a freedom show, not a European show.
We know that the valley floor, if you're staying in Napa, when you get up in the morning, it's like foggy until like 10 or like 10:30, and then it burns off, and that marine layer burns off. But what's unique about Howell is, although it's colder weather on top of the mountain, they get like 3 hours extra sunshine every morning. So like I live up there, and like I have to keep my blinds drawn because 6 o'clock in the morning the sun's out there hitting the vineyards, and that extra 3 hours, even it's colder in Howell Mountain and it's usually a little slower to ripen the fruit up there, that extra 3 hours kind of adds up over the growing season, and we harvest almost the same time as the valley floor does, maybe a week later or 2 weeks later. But
are there any AVAs now above Howell Mountain, like north of in Napa? I mean, like because you have the Napa area,
right?
And then I think
you're talking height wise, because Calistoga's technically more north.
Well, you end up with the southernmost one is Carneros.
Yeah. The most north in Napa Valley is Calistoga. Yeah, but that's still kind of like that's valley floor, like kind of below Mount St. Helena.
Yeah, are you bigger? Because I like mountain fruit a lot, and we were talking about this in one episode we did where we had Sojourns, Howell, and Spring to kind of compare. And I have a buddy who works over at La Coya, and being that they have all 4 different ones, I like Vita, but all my fridge mountain ones are Vita or Howell Mountain wines.
So I love this topic because all the mountain districts are so different.
Yeah.
Howell is unique in the fact that it has a western-facing slope, so it gets afternoon sun all afternoon.
Okay.
So the intensity of Howell Mountain wines and like the richness is somewhat more powerful than it would be on the other side of the mountain on the Mayacamas because the afternoon sun doesn't hit Spring Mountain.
So if this was like, if the tabletop of the mountain was like this, it's not a flat land and all the vineyards are kind of just on a side slope that faces west for the most part. Like there's really nothing on kind of the other side.
On the other side, not really. And then you get down and it's Pope Valley behind there. And
Okay.
there's some grapes that are grown down in Pope Valley. They're halfway decent, but some really good Sauvignon Blanc back there. But what makes, I think, Howell really unique above the other mountain appellations is that it has intense afternoon sun. But the freshness is there with Vider and with Spring because they don't have that intense afternoon sun, and so they lose a little bit of that kind of dark, rich ripeness, but then you'll have amazing acid.
Yeah.
Right? Like Spring Mountain, like you go up there, the wines are ripping acid, good tannin, but they lack like fleshiness, right? They're not like super round.
Have you done harvests up on the mountain? Like actually like been out there when they picked at a couple morning times or anything like that?
Well, we're picking right now.
And you're not there.
Sauvignon Blanc. Well,
Sorry, it's just the white
the
wine
day I
right
flew
now.
out, like they're picking Sauvignon Blanc. Cabernet is still like another month out. But yeah, I was in harvest in Oakville when I was at Turnbull, and so I got to experience harvest mostly on the valley floor. Out of the mountain appellations, Howell's probably my favorite. I know I'm biased. I live up there, but Vider for me has like the most aromatic complexity.
Yeah,
Like I love Vider. Like the wines. There's something about the wines on Mount Vider that smell just so good.
Dude, that and Coombsville to me is always one of my favorite because there's a very specific smell that I'll sit there and with him I'll be like, I'm pretty sure this is a Coombsville. There's almost like a minty freshness that comes out of Coombsville.
It's cold down there in that south part of Napa. It's cold. It's closer to the bay, and Coombsville, the Cabernet, doesn't get like heavy duty richness or ripeness. They're amazing wines. But because of the colder temperatures, I think that some of the Cabernet still has a lot of pyrazine in it, and so you'll get perfumed wines. Same with Vider. Vider's more south. It's closer to the bay, and so that cooler temperature, I think, sometimes dries up. It brings up more aromatics in the wine. There's more pyrazines in the wines.
I don't think most people even realize how different the different areas of Napa. They think of Napa as one area, and that's it. And so we're talking about, Oakville, we're talking about, Alice Peak, we're talking about Vider, and I don't think the average consumer even realizes that there's a difference.
It's crazy. Like the microclimates in Napa are so different, and it's a patchwork of 100 and some odd different soils. I mean, that valley was created by like tectonic movement. Like the whole Mayacamas.
The volcanoes at the back end of that.
Right.
St. Helena.
The whole Mayacamas, though, is a fucking tectonic plate that lifted out of the ocean. And then you have the other side of the Vaca range, and that's all lava flow and compacted ash, which we call tufa, right? So that's what tufa is? So both sides of the mountain are entirely different. So you'll have like marine sedimentary soils on the Mayacamas, and then lava stone on the other side, and then patchwork of all types of strata on the valley floor. It's crazy. It's such a diverse place, and having lived there now for a while, for 3 years, I've been able to like taste out so many different places, and there's a reason why we've broken these things down into these subcategories, these sub-AVAs, because their wines are completely fucking different.
Do you think that at this point, living up there and trying all the different wines, you could pick out the different AVAs mostly by smelling or tasting these wines with a lot of them?
I think that maybe mountain versus valley floor I could probably do. But when it comes to like picking Oakville versus Rutherford and versus like wines grown in St. Helena, I mean, the wines are very similar to there. I would like to think because I worked in Oakville and I know the wines so well in Oakville that I could pick out like the ripe, beautiful opulence of Oakville.
I get a lot of greenness. I actually get, for me with Oakville, especially young Oakville wines, almost you get that a fair amount of bell pepper coming out of them with a lot.
I don't know.
Of them.
I don't necessarily get that, but it's the warmest appellation in Napa Valley.
I would like to see people do.
So usually it's ripeness that they get in Oakville. But
you could probably do a comparative tasting if you get people about the exact same size, like 200 pounds, 6'2" thing, have them all drink, and you could see who gets drunk quicker off of mountain fruit versus valley fruit, because it's like probably a good 2% alcohol swing between what you're drinking.
Everything in Oakville is 15% alcohol.
At like minimum, I imagine.
Yeah. I mean, not everything, but the majority of the wineries pick pretty late down there, and they're getting lots of sugars in the grapes. So 15 is the standard. The mountain wines are usually, generally speaking, I haven't even checked these, but I bet all three of these are less than 15%.
I bring my dad to Napa. I mean, you met him a bunch of times when I brought him to Turnbull, and taking him through, he's clearly a floor Napa Valley drinker. He likes that big,
He's a
jammy
Scotch drinker.
He's a Scotch drinker.
rich
Yeah,
coffee
he likes the big
yeah.
stuff.
Yeah, so 14.6, 14.4, and 14.1.
Yeah.
All right, so I appreciate that for one reason is that usually when a lot of winemakers just put 14.5 on every bottle because they know that they get the extra swing, they get the half percentage swing by law.
I think it's 1%. 1 full percent
Yeah.
is what they have.
So, but usually if somebody uses an odd number, so instead of saying 14 or 14.5, when it has 14.1, 14.7, 14.6, usually it's a pretty accurate reading to me.
Right.
This is
So this is Neo family. This is literally from my doorstep, about 200 yards, and I always take like this nature walk down this road. It's called Liparita, and there's like these two little ponies that are really funny. I feed them like
little
grass.
Shetland ponies.
Little Shetland ponies. I like gave them some names and stuff, and
Would you name them?
oh fuck, I forgot.
T-Boz and Left Eye.
Because that's Sean had goats, and that's what he named his goats.
Charlie Murphy, T-Boz and Left Eye.
But I'll like bring like a bag of carrots and like feed them carrots. But anyways, on that walk, it's like 200 yards down. And there's Neil family down there, family-owned winery.
How many wineries are there approximately in the Howell Mountain area? Do you know if they're like a rough estimate?
I have actually no idea.
Okay, I
I
was just kinda
know that
curious.
answer. But it's pretty concentrated. There's a lot of wineries up there that are like small little family-run things too that just don't have tasting rooms. But it's pretty densely planted, but not like the valley floor.
And it's
That's
only
gonna be hard, though.
2,000 acres, I think, total in Howell Mountain.
Well, the mountain's giant, but like
What falls into the AVA? Though.
yeah, I don't know the exact acreage, but the mountain like has a lot of space on it to plant things, but they don't plant very much anymore because a lot of that property, a lot of the land up there is owned by the Seventh-day Adventist Church.
Aren't those? I was talking about this earlier. Aren't those the people who want the apocalypse to happen?
I don't know. I think they're great people. Number one, I live
Imagine.
amongst them, and they're like really super kind. But it's so funny. Like Howell Mountain is such a beautiful place. All these forests, and it could be like the posh, like almost like Aspen of Napa. But because the Seventh-day Adventist Church really owns like over half of the mountain, they don't drink alcohol. They're vegan, and so there's no bars up there. There's no restaurants up there.
So is it
and everything's closed on Saturday because that's what they.
that's their like holy day?
That's
You
their
can't
holy
do
day.
tasting room openings on Saturday, or
No,
are they-
that's what's so funny is that the winery, like this mountain's packed full of like most amazing wineries, and they're open for business on Saturdays, of course.
Interesting.
But like the Adventist community, like everything that's commercial real estate is all theirs, and so there's no restaurants, there's no bars, there's no coffee shop up there.
Well, they founded the town of Angwin.
Well, Angwin had existed, but there was a resort, and I don't know like the deep history of this, so don't like quote me on this. But there was a resort that the church bought, and then they repurposed it for the college. So Pacific Union College is the college up there.
I'm assuming Presbyterian College or Seventh-day Adventist.
Seventh-day Adventist College,
College.
yeah. I mean, you don't have to be Seventh-day Adventist to attend, but
God, that'd be a great college to go to. It's got to be tiny, but still.
So-
it's tiny. They have a good curriculum, and
So in Angwin, the restaurants, do they serve alcohol or they?
there's no
There's no
restaurants.
restaurants.
There's not even one.
That's got to be rough living up there then.
Well,
for
St.
part of that
Helena
reason.
is 10, 15-minute drive, so it's not that far. Just go down to St. Helena. There's plenty of restaurants down
Tough
there.
drive, like real windy.
But
And
the reason why I even brought that up is because of that absence of commercial activity up there. They've also preserved this giant, badass forest back there. It's called Las Posadas. And no one ever hikes in it. And I go down there, and there's like this untapped, like 40,000 acres of beautiful forest, incredible like Doug firs and California pines and even redwoods. And I have this like forest that's completely preserved by this church, and I can like hike back there, and there's all this like natural beauty that, had it not been that way, where they protected that forest, I mean, maybe it might be all vineyards.
I totally forgot that about you, that you were very much into plants. I remember when the first times I was selling you wine, you made me walk outside, and we walked through this garden outside the wine shop, and you're showing me cactuses, and you're telling me about these plants. This one just flowered last night, and it's only flowers once a year, and we spent 30 minutes walking through this garden before you let me even present you wine.
I'm fucking fascinated with it, man.
awesome.
I'm fucking fascinated with Mother Nature. It's like kind of like religious to me. Like that's where I find my religion. I'm not an overly religious person, but when I'm out in nature, and I get overwhelmed. I love it all, and so I try to like this. I just did this recently, which is kind of funny. As I went through Las Posadas, I'm trying to figure out all the names of all the trees and everything like that, and be able to identify them all. And So I've been out there like collecting leaves and shit and going back home and like Googling them and trying to find them and stuff. And there's
Dude,
like,
they have an app that you can take a picture.
yeah, I
of
bet there
and
is
tells-
an
yeah.
app for that. I need to
I've
get
got
that
it on
shit.
my phone because
There's an app for everything nowadays.
Yeah.
I only downloaded it because I was like, what the hell is growing out of my ground after a rainstorm? Turned out it was corn, which I don't know how the hell. Yeah. That side of my house, that big stalk that I had, where I was like, what is this? Went on and did the what is this picture app or something and snapped a picture and was like, this is corn. I'm like, I don't even know where the hell corn would be growing and why. I live in Old Town Scottsdale and there's corn growing on my property.
Could
But
be
it's
worse.
fun, yeah, because now we'll go to like my girlfriend's huge into plants. She loves to get like little succulents or ivies or it's like Jumanji in my house. So I'm constantly like, all right, well, because she'll
You need
name
some
drop
plants around
something.
here, man. By the way,
I do.
That's what Sarah was supposed to do.
you know, it
yeah.
brings so much life to your house. I have like my
Dude,
little,
I love
my
it.
little tiny place up there. I have like 8 house plants, like a jungle, but it gives you this like beautiful feeling in there.
It turns out I'm really only good at growing one thing, and that's weeds. And
You have
and
weeds
some
all
muck-
over the house.
My plants out back died, and now weeds are taking over. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, everything I do, I kill plants.
So here's the thing.
Weeds take over.
You have to invest in plants that thrive on neglect. that like don't need anything. That's what I've done. And so like I just set them and forget them. And like oftentimes the way people kill plants is because they like worry about them too much. They feed the shit out of them,
Overwater,
overwater them, and then you rot the roots, and it's over.
I got to find a girlfriend
just
that has
don't
the
feed
same
'em.
mentality.
Thrives
Thrives on neglect.
Dude, we've all had those girlfriends. They're not good.
So
I don't kill those, by the way.
So what we're drinking the first one. This one's Neal Family, very small winery up on Howell. This is their estate Cabernet. They make other wines up there too. Very affordable wines, and a lot of these wineries, like for the quality of what they're producing up there on Howell, like if they were a Valley Floor appellation, they'd be charging $150, $200 for these wines. But every one of these, well, I think this one's over $100. I think the Bravante is like $125, but this is under $100. This is under $100. Like the wines are in relative terms. I mean, $100 is fucking expensive. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
But compared to like Italian or certain,
But like in the
Spanish
wine
wines
industry,
and
you're
stuff.
like, oh, that's not bad for being Howell Mountain.
But they've kept the prices really really reasonable. So
I was
but
reading
they're
that-
damn good wines.
They have a lot of, like, Zinfandel's a very important grape up there, but I don't necessarily see a lot of Zinfandels coming out there. You always talk about Howell Mountain Cab. Like,
Well, it used to be a big thing. Obviously, if you're an intelligent farmer that wants to stay in business and you
Make
have
money.
a 100-acre property and you
True.
you see that a Cabernet is selling for $100 a bottle and maybe you might get $27 for a bottle of Zinfandel. I mean, logic's going to take over after a while and you're going to replant everything and it becomes more of a monoculture. But Zinfandel was a very important grape on Howell Mountain for a very long time, and there's still some small producers that make Zinfandel up there.
Too bad that
Like
happens.
Black Sears and stuff like
were
that.
talking
Robert
about-
Craig had one.
Robert Craig.
Yeah.
rest in peace.
Yeah, that's right. He just passed away.
away
That's
this
right.
weekend.
Just saw that.
I've seen a couple Howell Mountain Zins, and it's crazy because you drink those things and they're lighter than what people expect from a Lodi Zin, obviously by every means, but it tastes so good. And it's sad that you see like certain awesome vineyard sites. You're like, that's such a cool weird grape get ripped up and torn
For
up, and they
Cabernet.
throw in cab, and which
It
is.
is.
Isn't too bad, but at the same time you lose that diversity of grapes up there.
Yeah, it's a little tough to see that, because Zinfandel is like pretty much heritage. It's been around in California for 100 years, and for it to take like an old vine, gnarly Zinfandel plant, which by the way, they crop heavy like the majority of their life, even when they're old.
Yeah.
You can get a big crop off Zinfandel. To pull that out just to plant it for Cabernet for financial reasons is tough to see. But I get it.
Yeah,
I get it.
I mean, I went to one. Have you ever been over to Schoolhouse? They have all that Pinot Noir that's in that bowl in Spring Mountain. I think they're the only Pinot Noir producer on Spring Mountain, or the only Pinot Noir vineyard on Spring Mountain.
Right.
It's honestly one of the coolest wines. Grant, the guy's owned that property for like 70 years, so he doesn't care. He's like, this is my place.
There's some cool outlier properties like that, like the people that make the wine El Molino.
I'm not familiar.
They're like Rutherford Pinot and Rutherford Chard. When Rutherford's like
yeah,
super warm
Rutherford
up there.
Pinot.
But they're really damn good wines, and I just think like if the site is really good and it's like growing beautiful Pinot Noir, even if it's like up in the valley where it's hot, if it's still good, like why pull it out and plant Cabernet?
Yeah.
I don't know. I respect that though.
But you were talking about they're picking Sauvignon Blanc, you said, up there. So, I mean, obviously they're still growing other varietals.
So we are crazy. So I work for a winery, and we'll keep them out of the discussion because I don't want to be a representative of this winery. But We grow Sauvignon Blanc up on Howell Mountain, which is incredibly rare. We grow a very small amount of it, but as to not be a winery that just has Cabernet, and so we can pour something nice and refreshing during the summer. We have
It's funny,
Sauvignon
he
Blanc.
just gave it away because he's like the only Sauvignon Blanc guy up there.
No, I mean there's other Sauvignon Blanc growing up there for sure, but like we're somewhat rare in that to have Sauvignon Blanc on Howell Mountain.
So what else is growing up there right now? They have, I mean, of course, Cabernet's the king. Probably a good amount of Merlot.
Well, everything that's Bordeaux grape is growing up there.
Any Syrah, or people say no because it's tough to get rid of, and it's just kind of.
I don't know. I don't see too much Syrah, but I know it's planted on the mountain somewhere. But there's not like a Syrah producer like that's known for their Syrah up on Howell Mountain very much.
Franc.
You said you have a house up there, right? Are people allowed, if they have houses up there, are they allowed to plant vines in their backyard?
Well, they certainly have to get like permitted from the county, but
Do they? Okay.
So my house, the owner of the house, I do not own the house. I wish I did. But the owner, my landlord, he had to go through a lot of permitting and got like red flagged and all this shit. But he has like an acre or like maybe over like a little less than an acre of Cabernet. So like my house is surrounded by a Cabernet vineyard, which is really cool. But I think that there's probably a quantity.
I was gonna say, I wonder if it's
Like a
based
certain
on
amount of vines where you have to like get permitted.
like if they were to sell it to, let's say, one of these guys versus like, no, that's mine. I make that because it's my
I
backyard.
think you just plant it in your backyard. There shouldn't be a problem. It's just as
It's
if you
just-
grew
there's-
tomatoes or
Dude, it's
watermelon.
California.
I'm sure there's a
Who the
certain amount
hell
of
knows?
quantity.
California probably they're like you can't even use
Probably
water
water
on
rights.
it, and yeah.
But the answer to that, I think, is yes, that you can do it because I know like several of my neighbors have like 3 rows, and so I think so.
imagine.
But when you get into the commercial thing where you're going to sell the fruit
Actually, yeah.
and you want to claim that fruit is Howell Mountain AVA, you definitely have to get licensed and for someone to buy that and call it Howell Mountain
Yeah,
fruit.
if you just grew 3 rows in your backyard and just made it yourself in your basement, I don't think anyone would have a.
Most people probably wouldn't even know you were making it, but
Yeah, it wouldn't be a big
point,
deal.
too.
It's
Which
as
is
soon as
legal.
as soon as you try and sell it, though, yeah, government wants a little cut of it.
Yeah, especially in California perspective. This was good, by the way, man. This was way lighter than I thought. The tannins are actually really, really soft on this one for being 2014.
Yeah. You know what's 14 though. 14 was a cooler vintage, and the wines did come across a little bit lighter in body and more perfumed and higher acid. Whereas we'll go into 15 next, and you guys will see like this wine. It's from a different winery completely, and a different winemaker, but it's got more. It's going to have more unctuous like richness to it because it's a 15, and then this is 13, which is also a big round, beautiful vintage.
I love it.
So
Three
we kinda
separate
have
vintages. I
we
love
have a
that.
14, 15, and a 13, which is cool. So we'll be able to see the differences.
So let's talk about you for a minute, and then we'll go back to Howell Mountain.
Yeah.
Who are you?
Who is your daddy and what does he do?
Yeah. So to the listeners, I'm Thomas, and I was am a sommelier, and I had been in the Arizona sommelier community for many, many years, and worked most sides of the business. Did a retail for a long time, and then I moved on to a little bit of wholesale work, and then got into the restaurant business and became a sommelier and got credentialed in that, and was able to direct some really neat wine programs in Arizona. And
Are you level 1, 2, 3, 4, 5,
I'm
6?
a certified sommelier. You know, at the point of when I passed my second level sommelier, did I want to pursue like an advanced or a master? I mean, that could have been something that would have had my interest, except for the fact that like I already was in possession of some of the best sommelier jobs in Arizona. I didn't really feel like I needed to credential myself more in order to achieve a better job. And and I also don't think that those certifications like define you as a sommelier, which is like a philosophy of mine. Like a sommelier is a man of the people and needs to be concerned themselves with maybe not how much knowledge to obtain, but how to be able to talk to like humans, and, like connect with them, and be able to give them an amazing
people
experience.
forget that sometimes.
And as much as you know about wine, that doesn't necessarily translate to dollars and cents for your restaurant either. Like you could be a fucking master sommelier and have your wine list filled full of esoteric, weird wines that no one wants to drink that just match your palate as a master sommelier.
And they have no personality.
And you're going to be fired really quickly because you're not making any money for the restaurant. So I believe in, yes, knowledge is really super important in the realm of a sommelier. But what's even more important is your ability to first connect with the guest and then have a wine list that is going to be approachable and that they're going to want to drink those wines on the list. I'm not someone that's saying you just need to load your wine list full of like brands, but I'm also not of the opinion that you should load your wine list full of esoteric wines from like little islands and shit either, even though those wines are really appealing to us because we're geeks. But like the average consumer sometimes just feels comfortable opening a fucking bottle of Silver Oak.
That's one thing we
Right?
talk about a lot.
Even though
out
there's
here
better
is-
wines, but
yeah.
like they feel comfortable with that. And if they feel comfortable, why force them into a situation where they're not going to feel comfortable?
So like because we talk about, especially in this city, and honestly, it's like this city's kind of becoming like its angsty teenager. Like it was the same exact thing forever. There was only a couple handful of restaurants that had great menus. You were on one of them for a while, and there was not really any sommeliers out there because this was catered to everybody who visited Arizona at the time. So it was always big brand, big brand, big brand. And we were at dinner one night, eating at a place that's super well known. We looked at the wine menu and we just like, fuck, like whatever, we'll just get this because we kind of know it a little bit. But now you're starting to see it. We go to a place like Glybon and their menu is just all just really cool wines that you kind of know, but they pair nicely.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
every little restaurant's starting to stash in these really awesome, cool wines while still maintaining the couple big brands that people know
Yeah.
just in case.
Well, a great wine program, you're going to balance the
You have to
mainstream
strike a
stuff
balance.
and the geeky stuff. Because you know what? I'm going to go in and I don't want to drink a mainstream wine that I can buy in a grocery store. But my mom or my father are comfortable buying those wines.
Right. Like some people aren't comfortable buying Fiano.
Yeah.
They want like Chard.
Kerner.
Valentiner.
We were drinking Kerner that one night at
Kerner.
Glybon at the Thai restaurant.
Right.
And how old was that? It was like a 7-year-old Kerner.
They'd probably been holding on to it for 5 years.
By the way, banging too, out of nowhere. We were like, dude, what a gem we found. A 7-year-old Kerner. Yeah.
Yeah, that shit is good.
It's so
It's a neat
good.
grape. What is that? Some hybrid of like Mueller Turgau or some shit?
and Riesling.
yeah, right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's grown in the far northeast of Italy, up above Trento.
There you go.
Valle Sarco.
It's funny, like you'd think like maybe 1,000 years from now, if everything is the way that it is, Howell Mountain would be like a weird outlier of cab being done. Because everybody's so used to Valley Floor cab being so big and so predominant, so over oaked and macerated that when you have this, you're kind of blown. It kind of is a reflection of like people like my dad who drink the Scarlets, the big jammy stuff, the everything that comes from the Rutherford and Oakville, and because I poured him a bunch of Howell Mountains and Spring Mountain, and he was like, I can't drink Spring, it's tearing my mouth apart, and the Howell Mountain's too light for me.
Right.
But all the flavor in the world was in the Howell Mountain. Granted, they were younger, but still.
So you're someone I respect an awful lot in the business because of your palate, the way you've approached everything, the way you've always been fair to reps, the way you've always been fair with building lists. How did you get into the business? What was your epiphany moment, or what made you go, you know what, this is my direction, this is my career path?
I don't know. It was funny. I grew up with parents that drank wine. They were very religious people that didn't drink wine, and so I wasn't exposed to it for a long time during my life. But I got this little job as a clerk at AJ's, which for those of you that don't live in Arizona, AJ's is like a super high-end grocer that has shitloads of gourmet food, and also they have like a big-ass wine cellar and a big humidor, like for cigars. And I was always interested in cigars a little bit, so I would like mosey on in. I was a clerk, right? I was like stocking groceries, but I would like go into the wine cellar and like kind of head towards the humidor and like check out the cigars, and I'd buy one here and there, and I would talk to the cellar master at the time about Ed Sullivan. So shout out. So I would talk to him about these cigars, and I'd be like, "Oh, this one has a Connecticut shade wrapper. This one's from Nicaragua, and this one, is from such and such, from Honduras or whatever." And we would talk about the different flavors involved with cigars, and I was really intrigued by that. And after a while, he's like, "Hey, if you like this, and like you can like delineate the flavors of these tobaccos, and you're like super geeky about that, like maybe I should teach you about wine. Like, what would you say about moving into my department? And like I can get you stopping like." From stocking shelves, I can get you like doing something that would be valuable for yourself, and I'll give you like a $3 raise. So that I was like, of course, I was like, cool. I don't know anything about wine. I don't really care about it at all. I mean, I might have tasted wine like 2 or 3 times in my entire life, but I was like, hey, $3 an hour, shit, I'll do it. So the epiphany moment where I knew that like this was going to be for me was I got to being brought into that environment with people that knew a lot about wine, these cellar masters that had procured these collections at all these fine grocery stores. They kind of took me in, and they were very great mentors for me, and a lot of them I still love a lot today. But they would bring me these tastings, and this was when the wine market was booming back then too in Arizona, and so I would be going to like a DRC tasting. There's like fucking 15 bottles of DRC, like tastings that you wouldn't even believe. And I was like such a novice. I didn't know anything. I didn't even know what DRC was. I didn't know what it was drinking. I was just like, oh, this is great. It tastes like cherries and leaves. I didn't know it was like $1,000 a bottle. But the epiphany moment I had is I went to this trade tasting. I think it was a Southern Wine and Spirit show, and it was like the theme was Big Reds, and pretty much an opportunity for buyers to like get ready for the season coming up and like find all the big expensive reds that they were going to buy. And I went to this little table where there's this really cute little French girl, dark hair, really elegant.
Always the cute girls that bring you into wine.
Real elegant. She was pouring a wine out of a decanter, and the bottle was really pretty. It had a yellow label and a bell on it. And Angelus, Chateau Angelus. And eye-opening moment for me. And I was like really enchanted, obviously, this beautiful French girl pouring me wine. But she poured me a 1996 Angelus. And that moment I was like, wow, man, like this is different. Like this is good. This is really good.
That's really cool.
I'm really intrigued by this now. And so that was one of the moments. There's been lots of like aha moments for me, but the one that kind of set me on this different plane was like Chateau Angelus. Right? There's always one that just does it. Right?
Okay,
but,
now that's my story, but the same thing. I had dating a girl who loved wine, this girl Casey, and I was like, okay, crap, she loves wine. I got to do something to like figure out wine and shit. And I went to Bevmo and bought, those 5-cent deals or whatever with the bottle box. And I always remember the wine. It's the Tappy small bag, always. And I never still to this day think, was it the girl that got me into the wine, or was it that wine that got me the wine, or was it just both things coming together?
Now you're making me feel like an asshole, like Tapis, dude. Like I'm like a bougie ass motherfucker.
You got the good shit, yeah. But
Angelus over here, and then Tapis, man. I feel really bad now.
I am a
I'm not
cheap
that
person,
way.
bro. I'm a cheap, grimy person when it comes down to. I eat Sabaros if given an
I like
opportunity.
Sbarro. Come on, bring me some of that.
My man.
But literally, I had the same thing. Every wine tasted like wine to me. It all tasted. Red tasted like wine. White tasted like wine.
Wine taste.
That's it. Just
Wine
tastes
taste.
like wine.
Wine taste.
Yeah.
And I had a bottle of 96 Jordan that made me go. And that was the wine
Is
that
that
goes.
at Fraser's by any chance?
No, it was actually I was managing a restaurant, and it was my GM's favorite wine, and he was given the gift by a rep for being a.
Some of those older
good
Jordans
accountant.
were really good. They were really making good wine back in the 90s.
And I
What,
met,
Alexander?
It is now. I don't know if it was then, but it's Alexander Valley, yeah.
but I just remember him. We finished work, we popped that bottle, and that was the first bottle that ever had nuance. It was ups and downs and lefts and rights and hills and valleys and peaks, and there was just so much going on. It didn't taste like just wine, and that was one of my epiphany moments where I was like, now I get it.
That's really damn cool.
Yeah, and then of course I worked for some mediocre jobs for a little bit, and then I worked for a restaurant where they focused really heavily on wine, and that's where I fell in love with Italian wines.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's where I fell in love with Valpolicellas and Amarones.
So taste this. This is one of my favorite wineries on Howell Mountain, and I just did a tour up there with the hospitality manager. Her name's Michelle, and she's so fabulous. And they take you on like this off-road excursions. Chimarosa, by the way. They take you on an off-road excursion on like this crazy backward Howell Mountain road.
Like
and
a little ATV or one of those
Crazy,
Jeep
yeah.
thingies.
And she took me way up to the top of the estate, and then there's like this little cabin up there that they do their tastings in. And
That's so cool.
we tasted all through all their Cabernets, and just spectacular wine for me. This is for me a little bit more opulent than the first. So you can maybe see vintage variations. Obviously a different winery, but you might see the 15 vintage now show its like sleeves.
And what do you mean by opulent, real quick?
By opulent, I mean like round and rich, right? Like opulence.
So a lot of people don't know these terms too that might be listening around the world. So we always try and break down some of these
opulence
terms.
as opposed to like lean and like high acid and like.
Are these
that.
still mostly all family, or are they been bought out by like a hedge fund?
All three of
big
these
thing?
wineries are 100% family owned.
Is that you think that's kind of just because it's tiny up there and there's not much they could do? Because every time we see certain wineries that we love, it's always bought out.
Well, wineries like these, so all these wineries, the biggest production winery of all three of these is Neal Family. They make 5,000 cases. So that's really small.
Which is crazy,
production.
which isn't a lot.
So a small winery like this, that's only making 1,000 cases or 2,000 cases, isn't really commercially appealing to like a big company, really, like in dollars and cents wise. So I think that's the reason why a lot of Howell Mountain wineries,
especially when they're only
family-owned.
$70 bottles and not a $500 bottle.
Yeah.
There's definitely a lot more to that. That wine makes me want to drool on myself. I mean, really, that's
A ton of acid in that last.
This
meal.
is ripping Cabernet.
Yes.
I mean, they make boss Cabernet at Chimarosa. I mean, there's 3 or 4 different labels. This was the one that I kind of splurged on. It was a little bit more expensive, but
so. Is it Cimarosa or Chimarosa?
Chimarosa.
Okay.
It's Italian. They're
Okay.
Italian family that
Yeah.
owns it. But
You're right, man. I'm drooling practically. That's a lot of acid in there.
Yeah.
I'm getting-
it's ripping tannin too. I mean, this wine's dry. I mean, it's intense.
Which is crazy to me because the tannin is all there, but it's still compared to like a Barolo by any means or anything. Like it's still very. It's building now that the acid is going away.
it builds on the front.
There
yeah.
it is.
Uh-huh.
It's funny because I was drooling so much. I was like, there's not really a lot of tannin.
Yeah, this wine's got power. It's got presence. I
my gums
really
are stuck
wanted
to
to
my
put it in
teeth.
my damn wine cellar. So I have this. The only way I can save wine is if I get it away from my house. Like I'd never be able to do what you do, Damien, and have like a big ass refrigerator in my house full of wine because I just drink the shit out of it.
It also helps when you have 10 cases of like random who knows what the fuck wines that you could just pull from all the time.
There could be that too. But the reason why I have an off-site storage facility for my shit is so like I don't drink it.
okay.
And the moment that this happened to me, it's a funny story. I was alone on like a Tuesday night and like just sticking around. I had like 3 cases of wine at my house at the time. I should have way more wine than 3 cases, but I had 3
that
cases
actually blows my mind.
of some gems, and I was like, what should I drink tonight? And I had all kinds of good stuff, mediocre stuff and whatnot. And I was like, I had a 2010 Dominus, which I think was a 100-point wine by both Spectator and Parker, by the way, which doesn't really fucking matter.
Not really surprising.
But so I was like, I had this bottle of wine, expensive bottle of wine, and I was like, okay, I'm fucking drinking this. Like, I'm doing it. I'm pulling the trigger. It's just like it was magic in my hands when I pulled it out. I'm like, oh yeah, I'm just gonna do it. And I'm alone, so like, first of all, no one got to experience that bottle of wine with me. And I drank the whole damn thing. And when I got done drinking it, I had this moment where I was like, number one, that wine's way too fucking young. It was like nails on my palate. And then I was like, and also no one got to experience it. And so I was like, okay, I need to get this stuff away from myself. So
See, for me, I don't drink wine by myself very often. Being in sales, also, I always had extra bottles. I always had sample bottles. I'd come home with wines. How many times I'd used to stop by your house on the way home,
'em off.
and either drop them off and be like, "Hey, let's just drink these," because once I get home, I'm done drinking. I'm finished.
He was my Mr. Rogers, basically. He'd be like, knock, 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 knock.
Yeah,
Damien's here.
Davis, you're the Brunello.
Thank you. Yeah.
But I think being in the wholesale business and the rep business, I always had 10 open bottles in my bag on any given day. So I came home and I didn't want to drink or pop any bottles. And they just kind of started building up and building up and building up. And I'm like with you, I like to share wine. The amount of times I've gone to a restaurant even, bought a bottle of wine, poured myself that much, and sent it down the bar to people I don't even know. And just to see the reactions of them trying a great Brunello, Barolo, something they have never had before, that means a lot to me. I think for me, sharing wine is the magic thing about wine than just drinking it.
well, it's the affirmation too. It's like so fun to like drink wine with someone, then like you throw out like a descriptor or something like that, or you talk about the texture of the wine or whatever, and then like someone like there's like an emotional connection you have with the person across from you, and they're like, yeah, I get that. And that affirmation is really important for the wine drinking experience, in my opinion. Because if you're alone and you're drinking it, you can be like, yeah, this is fucking good and this is awesome, and you can really enjoy a bottle of wine alone. But there's also not that like camaraderie and like that moment where people are like, yeah, I get that too. Like, could you smell that underneath there?
Plus, you're right. What if
I
you
mean?
open up a banging bottle of wine and you're like, dude, and then you look around and it's, oh, fuck, there's nobody around me. So now I've just got this awesome bottle of wine. It's like having those moments where like, you guys, this is amazing. This is all that thing happened. Everybody stares and you go, well, you had to have been there. I'm like, well, cool. We weren't. So, oh, well.
And it is great throwing out descriptors at each other, though you can kind of screw each other too, because sometimes someone throws something out and then you can't get past it. I mean, that happened at a trade show we went to on Monday where I was like, oh my God, this smells like fresh horseradish. And the girl behind the table literally was like, she's like, that's all I smell now. Thanks, Damien.
You know? Well, you know, sometimes a wine that is semi one-dimensional, when you rock out a descriptor like that, that's all you can think of. Like, you can't help but like have a New Zealand Sauvignon Blanc, and like if someone mentions like, oh, this smells like gooseberries, well, then that's all you're ever going to smell from that wine. And that a lot of the time, like, no knock on New Zealand. Love the wines of New Zealand, but those wines are chock full of pyrazine, and they taste like gooseberries and grapefruit all the time.
It's the first wine you can train somebody to blind identify.
Like, I wish like I was on a blind tasting for like my master sommelier, and they like poured me fucking New Zealand Sauvignon Blanc.
I was gonna say
I'd be like, thanks.
the only other one
was
that I
easy.
figure would like every time we have a Chilean wine, there's always that jalapeno note in there because most of the times I know they're throwing stems in that are underripe or whatever, but still.
And Carmenere has that too if it's Carmenere. Like,
Really?
Carmenere is a late ripening variety that will maintain a lot of like natural pyrazine, and like it's green like that too. But there's something, you're right, there's something about Cabernet grown in Chile that has that eucalyptus-y
Yeah,
thing.
even when we drank that what 12, 13-year-old bottle, there was that little bit, just it was still in there, but it wasn't over dominating. It kind of gave like a compliment to it versus it was just like, well, cool, thanks for the jalapeno drink. Like, I don't want that.
So, when you go back, when you're in New York, say you're in New York City, people are drinking all sorts of wine. You're drinking everything. Tons of imports, stuff from California, Washington, Oregon. When you're in Washington, you're drinking either Washington, Oregon. Oregon's drinking Washington, Oregon. In Howell Mountain, do they just drink Napa Cab all the time?
They're not allowed to. It's a religious
Are you, or just an Angwin?
You know, it's funny, having lived in Napa now 3 years, it's like I do find myself drinking Cabernet all the fucking time. And so it's like when I do shop for wine, which I normally don't shop for too much wine. A lot of wine is given to me living in Napa and working for a winery. But when I shop for wine, I go to Sonoma County and I buy all the Sonoma County stuff. It's half the price as well, or even like a third of the price. So I try to not just get in the mode where I'm drinking Cabernet all the time. It's a little tough when you're getting gifted bottles of it. But to keep my palate well calibrated, I like to try to buy imports. I'm a member of a few little wine clubs that are just imported wines and stuff like that. And
are they wine shops that are doing these, or is it just like independent?
So there's a really great restaurant in downtown Napa. It's called a Notary. It's banging. If anyone's in downtown Napa, go to a Notary. Great sommeliers there as well. But they have this really super esoteric wine club, and they're giving you 4 bottles of wine every quarter for like $100.
That's so cool. Restaurant does that.
Super cheap too. It's badass. And all 4 of the wines, like I guarantee, unless you're like a geek like Damien, you'd like don't know what the grape variety is. I'm getting these things. I'm like, what is that, and where is it from? And the sommelier will come, who's a buddy of mine, and be like, yeah, this is from here. This is this. It's right next to a volcano. Like that's like you can taste that in the wine. But like I have no idea what these wines are, and they're so incredibly strange, and I love it.
Remember when I came to visit you in Napa like a year and a half ago or so, and I brought a Lugana, it's
like
crazy
like
high acid white wine from Italy, like that you've never had a Lugana.
I never even heard of it.
Yeah, I was so excited. This shop had it. And they had the reserve too. I was like, I'm buying this. I got to share it with Thomas.
I love those because the only time I've ever had a few of those opportunities, I did Vitadillo with these like 2 vineyards left in Spain. They're the only ones because they're like 130-year-old vines. They can't propagate them, so like this thing's gonna die and that's it. And I was like, I got one. I finally got one that none of you have ever had. Slammed that bottle down. And dude, it was a 10-year-old thing. And my mouth was just ripped out. It was the most tannic wine, I think. It was like right along like a Tannat, basically.
Or like a Sagrantino.
Sagrantino.
Like
and it was delicious. Where they're like, dude, this is so good. Oh, crap. But I was like, that's so fun to get the really obscure little stuff. Is there anything on Howell Mountain where you got like the one vineyard's like, hey, check this out. I got this one grape that we've had up here for a long. We have a Sangiovese out of nowhere. It's
I don't know if there's any
Chimarosa.
I don't know if there's any super esoteric wine up on Howell Mountain, man. There's not much of that in Napa. Period. Charbonneau is the one that's like heirloom.
I've seen Viognier's got a couple vineyard, but I know like Dariush has the one. But I've seen I saw a Sangiovese one. I can't remember. It was like maybe a
people grow Sangiovese in Napa.
Is it normal? Because I saw one and I tried it.
The Staglins grow Sangiovese. There's some small producers that I know. Silverado does a Sangiovese. There's some Sangiovese.
I mean, it makes sense wanting to drink some other stuff too. Once in a while. I mean, think about it, if you're an Italian living in Italy, you come to America, you don't want to eat Italian food.
It's funny though. That's totally the truth. When,
well, you definitely don't.
Just like you're visiting here and you're like, man, we went out for Thai food the other night. Went to here. We're going to all these other restaurants that we don't necessarily get in Napa proper area.
Oh no, when I come here, I eat Mexican food.
I understand.
Like I want dirty Sonoran Mexican food.
We got a lot of Mexican food here. Yeah. I live on Taco Row.
That's got to be tough too, especially being in Napa. There's only a couple restaurants and everybody's slinging.
What's funny
for
is
the most
like
expensive stuff.
Napa's like it's like 80% Mexican. Like everyone's Mexican in Napa because that's like any wine. By the way, props to the Mexicans and the Hispanic people. Every wine that you've ever tasted in Napa Valley has been touched by Hispanic hands. Mm-hmm. So I'd like to celebrate that, number one. But being that it's 80% Mexican population there, you'd think there would be some good Mexican food in Napa Valley.
Right?
It's like
don't they
different.
They don't have like Filibertos or Julio Bertos or Alibertos or Marco Bertos or any other
there's
Bertos?
No Bertos. Right. So
see, they don't know how to have their hangovers.
The Mexican food there is different because it's the Mexicans that live in Napa Valley are not from Sonora. They're from like Guadalajara and Jalisco and stuff like that. So the cuisine is just different. It's not that it's bad. It's like I'm used to eating like dirty burritos and like I'm used to Sonoran food. And so I think that's Mexican food. But their Mexican cuisine is different. So I don't enjoy it as much as I enjoy it when I come down here. I love the Mexican food in Arizona.
Plus, it's probably
way
more expensive to start a restaurant out in that general area.
That's just it. Like you can't really do that.
Yeah,
that's another reason why we had a conversation earlier about how Napa doesn't have like the middle price tier. Of course, they have fast food because that's corporately owned and they can lose money for many years.
And some Applebee's.
Right, but that middle of price point quality and price point food does not exist in Napa Valley, and especially Mexican food. Like you can't have a great Mexican restaurant because like you can only charge so much for a plate of enchiladas.
Yeah,
and like you could sell 1,000 tacos and 1,000 enchiladas and 1,000 burritos, and you're not going to pay your rent. Like, and so Napa Valley is kind of pigeonholed into doing fine, like expensive cuisine only. And so for the locals, that sucks because like you sometimes just want like a burrito. I don't want to have to go to like a Thomas
Santa
Keller
Rosa,
restaurant for
yeah.
lunch and pay and spend $100. So we have this disparity in Napa Valley of like affordable good cuisine because of how expensive it is to have commercial real estate there. So like you'd never be able to have a good little Thai restaurant or like a good Mexican restaurant. They just don't charge enough for that cuisine.
And the irony would be if you had a Thai or Mexican or Italian style restaurant, it would be so high end. It's a whole
Right.
nother way.
Well,
It's not the
Keller-
dirty stuff that we get.
Keller
out
just
here.
opened a new Mexican restaurant in downtown Yountville. It's called La Calenda, and it's really damn good. And I loved it when I went there. But do I see it surviving long term? Well, Thomas Keller has a lot of financial backing and with the whole, his restaurant group and everything like that. But can they survive in downtown Yountville serving tacos and burritos?
If you start,
Good luck.
if your bottom line is red after 2 years, you're going to close. Doesn't matter how much financial backing you have.
So we'll see. We'll see.
what about, are there any food trucks? Is that a
Food
thing?
truck. The food truck is a thing in Napa Valley, although it's not as prevalent as it is here. But yeah, that's something that's definitely emerging. And there's a lot of good food trucks, and there's actually like some really good tacos and stuff in these food trucks too. So that's
Because I could see that being a nice, bridge to bring in that good cuisine where you don't have to have a brick and mortar. You could just set up, and especially if you have a winery that's an outgoing winery that's down to
Pull up to the winery.
down to have a food truck out front still.
yeah.
But here's one thing. I mean, as great as that is, and you can pull up
kinda-
to the winery yourself, it's
kinda-
not like the food truck's going to want to drive up Howell Mountain and slink for the day.
And it kind of looks shady when you have this like multi-million-dollar winery that's just gorgeous, and then you have like
Food truck. Rand Dizzles rolls up.
Randizzle's food truck. Shout out to Randy. One of our good buddies is actually opening a food truck called Randizzle's.
Randizzles.
Yeah, he was a Quench rep. He was a rep for a local distributor here, and he just left to start his own food truck.
That's cool.
Yeah, it's gonna be
Wish him
amazing.
all the success.
Yeah, it's this town isn't quite the same as say someplace like San Diego or Colorado. Colorado's huge on food trucks. There's just not a lot of places that support them yet here. There's not enough beer bars and wine bars and places that allow them to set up.
Well, if we could add one more, it'd be fantastic.
Maybe we'll see what happens.
See what happens.
If there's a parking spot for them.
Yeah, maybe two.
So this out of the three wines is the only one that's not. It's not Cabernet. Well, it's mostly Cabernet. It's 75% Cabernet, but the winery Bravante doesn't put Cabernet on the label of
Is
this
that
wine.
75% or 85%?
75 is the law
Okay.
in Napa. But this wine,
Where's my cork?
this wine this year is 75%
No, that's not what we were talking about. We were talking about AVAs. You'll know this. Okay, that's right. Where's that?
Here we have a Somm here.
Okay, so if it were to say cab, it has to be 75%. But for it to say the AVA, Howell Mountain, Vita, whatever, I said it has to be 95%.
I think it's 95, bro.
Where's that cork?
We bet a cork on it.
I think it's 95.
I like it. See, that's all I wanted to hear.
All right.
I feel a little
If
validated
it says a
about that.
state, it has to be 100%
100%
a
for a
state.
state.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, so okay. So a state
But
reserve.
isn't there an 85 in there somewhere?
I thought 85 was California to say Napa Valley versus Oakville, Rutherford.
Walla Walla is in other parts of the country. There's a little stricter rules, but I'm not quite sure.
Yeah, and
I
vintage
I
is
gotta
like
restudy
90,
this.
95 to say 90 or
Vintage is 95, right?
95 also. Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
I got my
They
level.
cheat on that. All these winemakers cheat on that, by the way.
I got my level 1 Somm 12 years ago and haven't really studied it in depth since. And then I got my CSW also 12 years ago. And after that, Italian.
I'm a little cloudy on all the wine laws now. I don't study that stuff. I should get a little
Dude,
sharper
it's
on
so
it. but-
fluid. It moves every day. They just handed down 2 Supreme Court rulings that allow how you label your bottle, and the other one allows for shipping across the entire country. They basically said anybody from a store, this is the big one, stores, not just wineries, stores can ship across the country now. And that every state has to come into compliance. So 23 states
for
were
the
not.
consumer.
It's great for consumer. The problem is here's what the states are going to do: is they're going to sit there and say, "Well, fine, we're going to charge you $1,000 to sell into our state." So they're just going to pass a state law that stops people from selling in because the price will be ludicrous. Or they do I think it was Washington. They just gave up on it and went, "You know what? Fuck it. Everybody does whatever they want now at this point."
Well, eventually it'll go that route anyways because the internet's just too powerful to try to control anyway.
Yeah,
so.
well, we actually have my wineries had cease and desist from a couple states because people weren't paying the taxes on it. So we've had to work payments out with how we pay it. So we take the state's tax up front and then repay it back later on.
Taste this one. It's 13 vintage. You can smell and taste the age a little bit.
So here's my thing with Howell Mountain, because I know a lot of floor is, all muscle car. It's all there up front. It hits big, and then it falls apart after a couple of years. And you're like, well, that sucks. Howell Mountain, what do you like for you, for all the Howell you drank? Where do you think is like a prime drinking age? Is this something that's approachable to people now? Or you have
These
to sit
wines
this
are,
10 years?
in my opinion, are a little bit too young to be drinking. I don't know. I think Napa Valley in general, no matter where you are growing the grapes, I think 8 to 10 years old is the strike point for these wines. And I say that because like my personal palate says that I don't like wines that taste 20 years old that have lost fruit and are just earthy.
Yeah.
So I like a combination of big, beautiful fruit. I like a fair amount of acid, and I like the tannin to subside a little bit. So I like a wine 8 to 10. That's my preference as my palate speaks. But there's some people that love old wine taste, and they like a wine that's 20 years old that'll evolve quickly in the glass and like change all the time. Okay. So that's one cool thing about old wines is that they change a lot in the glass.
I've had a couple from Mountains, and we had that one when we did the 21 and over party. We found most of everything sucked, with the exception of the Philip Tony.
It's producer to producer, and Philip Tony is a producer that is renowned for producing wines that are better when they're old. It's like Randy Dunn on Howell Mountain.
Like, yeah, I always hear Dunn is just like one Dunn of the most fantastic.
It's backward though. You can't drink a brand new vintage of Dunn. Like it's gonna rip your face off.
Yeah.
But 20 years in, like there's nothing that drinks better almost than a Howell Mountain Dunn wine.
They do a disservice though, because then the reps get the new vintage, they sell it to a restaurant. You're a sommelier at a restaurant, and you have an option to buy one vintage, current release. And now you buy it, and now are you confident selling that to your customers?
You know, it's funny too. I was just speaking about this and about the Arizona market and like the clientele here and how they like drink their wines. Like they don't really care so much, and they drink things so young. And so like to a restaurateur, if they're just trying to make money and like stay afloat and dollars and cents, they don't really care. Like I'll buy the current vintage of Plum Jack. It's 2017. Like drink it tomorrow. But if you're a restaurateur that really cares about the experience and like the long term of your restaurant operation and like having clientele for many, many years, then you would procure, in my opinion, you'd procure a list that's more carefully selected upon when the wines are ready to drink. But I mean,
a lot of people just
do you
don't
think
know.
We'll see that? Like at some point, sometime with all these older wineries, they'll start flinging out 10, 12-year-old vintages, and then people will pick it up, put it on a menu. Because I rarely see the 10-year-old.
Well, it takes
Chimarosa.
It takes work for a sommelier to do that. They have to dig deep. But like a good sommelier, I think also will look for those like wines that have age on them. They might even pay a little bit of a premium to the distributor that gets that. But
a lot of different winemakers will do library releases. A lot of the Italians do that, where they will keep 30% of their vintage back, and then they'll release it in 5 years.
Borgonia.
No, Damiano, remember? We had the 99s that they released, I mean...
Doesn't Maya Kamas do that too? For every year they release their 10-year before?
Yeah, they're notorious for that.
Which is
Great
awesome,
wines,
by the way. We just had, the 09 the other day? It was fucking delicious.
Maya Kamas is one of the greatest tours, too, if you ever get to Napa.
Yeah.
Did it not burn down?
It got close. I think because
I called them and they were like, we're closed for now.
They almost burnt down. They didn't burn down, but I think maybe their tasting room or something.
I think that's what it was, because we couldn't go. They were like, we
the winery was intact, though.
Okay. Were you were in Napa at the time? You were down in...
I was there for the fires.
You were in Oakville, or you were living in...
I was living in Napa, but I was working in Oakville.
Okay. Yeah.
It was funny, like during the fires, which I hate talking about because I got asked about it every single day for years.
Tell us about it.
But I don't want to get into the fire. But what was crazy was that I would wake up in the morning and go outside to get in my car to go to work, and I'd have like an inch thick layer of ash on my car.
That's crazy.
It was intense, man. It was an intense time.
So did you see something we've talked with Sean Tivik about is smoke taint versus
well, number one,
bug smoke taint.
Bug smoke taint.
What number one everyone needs to realize about 2017 and the fires was that 95% of Napa was already harvested. It was already picked.
Yep.
And everything in Sonoma County was pretty much picked. And all Pinot and Chardonnay had been picked months before. So most of it didn't have any smoke taint. There was some, like Howell Mountain wasn't picked, though, most of Howell Mountain. But the smoke didn't get up there. So, like, Howell Mountain, generally speaking, is about 2 weeks behind the Valley Floor in terms of harvest because it's colder up there.
That's another one.
So they were mostly not picked on Howell, but the wines don't seem to have any smoke taint at all.
It was something that I read about a lawsuit recently in New York where the distributor was supposed to take a certain amount of cases of this vintage of wine, and they turned it down. They said the wine is all smoke tainted, but they're like,
there's a way to prove that.
It was all picked. It was already.
Well, there's a way to prove that, and I'm sure this is how like the court case would have gone down, is that you can test it per parts per million, and if it's over the threshold where a human, or under or over the threshold where a human being can actually detect it, that would be like the decision on that one.
Have you ever heard of earwig taint?
I don't like earwigs.
I don't either. They freak me out from camping and stuff like that. They used to
Yeah.
get my tent, and because they got those
Those are his
pincers on
daddy-
the back.
They
Mine
love
always
the,
the
they
daddy
love the
long
desert
legs.
out here. I don't see them too much in there.
So,
in Napa.
something we learned from Sean Tivik on the first time he was on the show was that when the smoke would come to the vineyards, the earwigs actually would leave and climb up into the bunches, and
crazy.
a lot of producers didn't have the time to get them out. So
Earwig taint.
they would actually
Yeah.
ferment it. And then the wine would be sold as smoke taint, but it wasn't smoke taint. It was actually earwig taint. He has earwig taint bottles at home that he's going to bring over and taste us on sometime.
Dirty ashtray.
He goes,
is
the difference
flavor.
between it's like smoked meat and dirty ashtray. He goes, if you taste a wine and it smells or tastes like dirty ashtray, that's actually earwig taint.
Do you know the most smoky ashtray wine I've ever tasted? 1983 Cheval Blanc.
Really?
Straight up ashtray.
Ooh.
Mentholy ashtray. And it was it was scintillating though. It was awesome, but it was
That's so weird.
Cheval Blanc. And you know what the best wine I've ever tasted in my life is?
Ooh.
The 1982 Cheval Blanc. Fucking lights
Isn't that
out.
the one that everybody goes fucking
Transformative.
crazy about?
No, 82 Cheval wasn't the one. Like 82 Bordeaux vintage.
Was it
People
like
went
47
gaga
Cheval was like the holy...
over. 47 Cheval.
Grail.
And
Why is it always
61,
Cheval Blanc
61
and-
Latour. But
That's
82,
Bordeaux, right?
82 Cheval Blanc. Fuck.
That's the one.
Best wine.
He just
That's
got
the
like
wine?
all squinty-eyed and stuff.
Cool.
Like,
Best
love
wine I've
that.
ever tasted, man.
Damn,
oh
man,
my God,
I've never.
transformative.
So I've been obviously blessed with trying a lot of cool wines, but I've never had that one where I sat there and I was like, I didn't pull a Damien where I just shut the fuck up for 20 minutes and went, no, I'm just gonna enjoy this.
What's
Yeah.
the best wine you've ever tasted in your life?
it's tough to say. I mean,
This is a funny question. It's like best. I hate the fucking term best. but,
because
like, what's the best?
for me,
What's that? What's your 82 Cheval Blanc?
Yeah.
for me, sometimes the best wine isn't always what's in the glass; it's who I'm sharing it with.
that's definitely
and
the
that,
case.
And that sometimes makes it taste even better. I'd say one of the wines that made me go "holy shit" in life was actually a Damiano Kenobi.
Yeah. It's a
And
great vineyard.
you know, I've been a lover of Barolo for many, many, many years, and a big collector of Barolo. And usually, I would buy my 6-packs. I'd drink a bottle. I'd say that's tannic as hell, and I'd put the rest of them down for 8 years. And I remember drinking that first ever 08 Kenobi, and I went, "Oh my god!" I domed the bottle myself that night. And then I opened a second bottle and I started knocking on neighbors' windows, and they thought I was.
You gotta taste this.
I lived in an apartment complex that had like 10 people, and I'm like knocking on doors, like in boxer shorts and a bottle of wine. Like, no, you have to try this right now.
That's the best kind of crazy is when somebody knocks on your door at 2 a.m. They open it up. You're like, drink this. Like, okay, well, I'm not getting murdered, so sure.
I've been exposed to some old Rieslings that are very memorable in my
that
life
stuff's
that
important.
that really,
It's really good wine.
transcended everything. But I think also that was the people I was with. It was the food we were having. You know, I'm having Thai food with old vintage single vineyard Donhoff. There's something special about that.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, a lot of the old wines I've had have not been good. You know, Bordeaux, we always say Bordeaux sometimes gets a free pass. You're like, well, I'm drinking a 1968, so.
On the for the record, though, I like California wines better than French wines.
That's really cool, actually. Yeah, like, it's rare to find some of that because I know
But-
a lot of people.
It's funny because I guess I speak that in the fact that like California is so blessed with weather, like that out of 10 years they might have like one shit vintage.
Yeah, what was it?
Right?
The last one was 11.
So the wines are so consistently good all the time. 11, right? They're so good all the time. So the breadth and width of the California wine industry, I think, is better than France. France and Bordeaux, they might have like out of 10 years, they might have like 3 good vintages out of 10 years, and kind of like 7 mediocres, or like 5 mediocres and 2
shit.
shitties. But when they get it right in Bordeaux, for fuck's sake, it's awesome.
That's
It's
kinda-
awesome.
yeah.
So they at the very peak of it all, I think that Bordeaux does at the very peak maybe
So
produce better
overall
wines.
consistency, California is.
But overall
fucking
consistency,
here.
like I want to drink California wines, man. They're amazing. They're amazingly consistent, and there's no Brett in these wines. These wines are clean, and their cellars are clean. And studies and like what we know about winemaking in both regions, actually, we've proven that like California wines use less chemicals and less sulfur and less
Interesting.
things to protect from bacteria because we're clean. Like our equipment is clean as shit.
That's
It's
like
new.
that
It's
cellar
new.
I sold you at Argiano where they told me like, don't touch the walls, you'll get syphilis. I mean, that wall.
They use much more. They use
Hepatitis
much
D.
more things.
God.
That's interesting, yeah, because I guess technically, like, especially because everything's being built new, it's not like this family's had a cellar for, I mean, how long? Like, Chimarosa, how long have they been around?
You know, they have a beautiful
At
estate
most
and they have a vineyard, but they
80 years?
custom crush their wine and they make it at Laird.
Okay.
On the valley floor.
So a lot of
they
these,
don't have a
a lot of
winery.
these places have a crazy OSHA driven, have to have everything clean style wineries. Plus, I imagine with
Right, there's
the
government
humidity's not
regulation
crazy.
that cares about.
And the humidity's
cleanliness.
not as much, I imagine, as parts of France would be.
Napa's dry as fuck, dude. There's no humidity.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
There you go. So you don't
We
have like
any
a crazy
rot,
amount of room
rot
to go.
issues. Yeah, and there's not a lot of like mildew and like mold and like or bacterias that are growing in the cellars. So,
True. You start going over to Europe, and some of these cellars have been infected for 50 years, 60
Right.
years, 100 years with different types of bacterias, molds, all sorts of stuff, and you
So-
don't know what's actually affecting your barrels and your wines. And
I mean, like I said before, though, I mean, like the pinnacle and the peak of what they do in Bordeaux at the very top vintage, I think outdrinks most things. But
I mean, I've been lucky to have some great Burgundies with up at Atlas Bistro with Marty. Marty opened a mid 70s vertical of Echazot or something one time, and it was all like 71, 72, 73, 74, 75, and it was just those wines were stunning. But
this brings me to another really cool question. I don't know if it's cool or not, but I love this question too. So
I like it when he's asking.
if you were
questions.
to eliminate every fucking category of wine besides one, meaning one region and one style of wine, and have just that one to drink for the rest of your life, what would you do? For me, it's white Burgundy, I think. But champagne is really good too that way.
Ooh,
I don't know.
That fucked me up was the champagne part.
White Burgundy, though, at its elite level, for me, those wines are so transformative.
So
It's like
basically, if the world falls apart and there's only one region,
one region left.
mine might be actually the Piedmont region.
You fuckers are always about Barolo.
But
I swear to God. I get it. I get it.
For
It's
me,
amazing.
the question I asked was a similar question. It was always, if you were trapped on a desert island, you could drink one wine the rest of your life. What would it be?
Well, that's the same question.
That would
Right,
actually,
but-
if that
but
was the
desert-
case,
desert-
it'd actually be champagne because I
Fucking
would drink. You could
champagne.
drink bubbles, all fucking.
But
day
it's
long.
desert island because so now you're dealing with like tropical weather. I don't want to drink Barolo on the fucking beach and when it's 90 degrees out. That does not.
This brings in different
That
context
sounds
completely, but-
fucking miserable.
So I would. So and
Yeah,
when
and
you
I
say
don't like
Piedmont,
sparkling wine
I'm not
from
talking just about
California.
Piedmont. I like one style of wine. So Barolo would be your.
Oh, well,
would be
no.
your game.
No, it wouldn't. I think you nailed it with the champagne. I love sparkling wine. I really do.
Dude,
It's my favorite
and at
thing.
an elite level, I wish I
Yeah.
could afford like badass champagne all the time. But like
Well,
I would
got-
drink a bottle of Krug
So,
every day.
I got really lucky. I have a lot of friends who work for certain brands, whether it's the I can't think of the portfolio, but it's like Krug and Runar
Strategic
and
or-
Runar's
James.
awesome.
It's in your drawer.
Yeah, but that's not the. It's the portfolio. It's that Diageo. That's the yeah. So it's Veuve Clicquot and these other ones, and it's fun to try a lot of
Moet.
those. But like we got lucky enough with Skurnik having that the growers or was it special
Grower
club
champagne.
Yeah,
all
the
that stuff.
special
That
club.
stuff's so good.
Dude, we opened one up for Thursday Night Football for the
Mm-hmm.
Packers Chicago's games, and I put it up on our Instagram and took the pictures, and it was the only time I ever looked at all four of my friends and they went, "Fuck you, I'm not giving any more of this. I'm drinking this when you're not looking. I want all of this all day."
So, desert island wine for me, honestly, dry Riesling. Bone dry Riesling.
From where? Just Germany, like that Gavex shit.
Yeah,
Columbia Valley made
you can
specifically
give me.
by Janowick and Chateau Saint Michel.
I wish I could break down the region of Germany better. I mean, I'm also a big fan of a lot of different Gruners. But
Dude, I don't know, man.
but for me, I love dry Riesling. I
Come on, bro.
love old dry Riesling. Old dry Riesling is so freaking good.
Over like fucking Leflevre, Batad Montrachet or something like that. Come on, bro.
I don't know white Burgundy enough. I've had
So
like
here's the
5
thing.
in my
So-
life.
so
I
and
don't.
they're-
I don't pretend to know a shitload about Burgundy.
So maybe
either.
that's it too. Is okay. You're right. The one wine I would never kick out of my bed would be like Grand Cru, like Chablis.
Okay, there you
Ooh,
go.
Chablis
Burgundy.
is
Back to
really good,
Burgundy.
too.
Yeah, you're right.
No, so I never
It's
knew.
weird
I
because
never
we're
knew a
all
lot of.
talking French.
Yeah.
I never
It's
knew
all
a lot
French.
about Burgundy or white Burgundy. Even I knew a little bit about the red stuff, but I never really understood white Burgundy until I took over the wine list at Bourbon Steak, which was originally formed by Raj Parr. And everyone that knows Raj Parr knows that he's like a bird hound, right? He loves Burgundy. And so I
See, real
inherited.
quickly, was he a master somm?
Never.
no, I
No.
don't
What
think he
was
ever
his
got a
thing?
Somm. He wasn't a Somm at all.
You know, he had so much talent, and like he had
Yeah.
he had like the ability in a blind tasting to be like, oh, this is 78 fucking whatever.
Oh, he was just so
Like-
good. He was just like
photographic,
Okay, cool.
type stuff.
Because
But-
everybody knows the name. I just didn't know.
So
if
he
had that.
built this list at Bourbon Steak with all this fucking Burgundy, and we know that Arizona is not necessarily the most like Burgundy
The
sophisticated
European
market, right?
French,
We like Napa Cab a lot in Arizona. So I had all this white Burgundy that was all like super expensive and aged, and like all these little small producers, but also like Lafleur and DRC and all this
Ravenau.
stuff. And Ravenau and all this great stuff.
Never had any of these.
Yeah, Ravenau is transformative. But so I had the chance to like have this list of like 10 to 15-year-old or even 20-year-old white Burgundy top level stuff to Grand Cru for relatively affordable price because we hadn't raised the prices on the list. And I got to pour a lot of that, and I had like really generous clientele that were like, here's a glass, and like poured me like a monster glass, and I'd go back and share it with the chef. But like, I got to taste the most incredible white Burgundy that no one would ever be, like $600, $800 bottles of white Burgundy. I'm telling you, man. Fuck.
It was
It's
that way.
good.
It was that way hanging out with Atlas and
It's
Britain, when Marty brought in
Marty
stuff.
brought
and
all that
we'd
stuff.
sit there
in.
and
It's just so good, though.
there were nights when I stopped into Atlas and I'd walk in there and I'd be like, "Hey, is Todd here?" No, and just be Marty by himself. And I'd be like, "Is Todd here?" No, he left. Well, is the chef here? No, he left. Is anybody here? He goes, "No, I have a key. You want to sit down and drink some burger with me?" Yeah.
So cool.
And then I'd sit there until 2 a.m. and drink insane burgundies with him. And I wish I took pictures of them because a lot of that stuff I was not well versed.
Yeah.
So I don't know a lot
You're,
of stuff.
you're drinking
I
like
actually
Coach Turi and shit, like crazy Burgundy.
Leroy.
It's impossible to get.
Yes.
Leroy.
Stuff
Incredible
stuff that nobody can
Yeah.
get. You know,
Those wines are so good.
the
man.
state of Arizona gets 3 bottles a year.
Right.
That's
It's less and less too with the Chinese
You're
market.
also-
getting
yeah, I was
involved.
gonna say you're speaking Chinese to me right now.
but I will say though, you're right. Being a good friend, you're quick to call me out of my bullshit.
Come on, man. I mean, I love Riesling too, man. Like Riesling would be like up there with me too, top 5 category.
is that like
for
when
me,
you
too.
say I love music, you
But I like
name
the
off
sweet
like
stuff.
the Beatles and things?
But I like
That
the
goes,
sweet
well, we
stuff,
fucking
Damien.
know.
You
but what's
I'm
your?
I'm a
your
Dead and
one?
Fish
Yeah.
fan still.
Like I like Auslese and I like the sweet stuff at a high level, like all that Terry Thies. Like, oh man, I love all that Riesling.
But you are right though. Like there's some of the best wine I've ever had. I remember sitting in Milan drinking Ravenau one night with somebody and
Ravenau.
Dagano.
So good.
But the Ravenau we were drinking their Premier and up.
Yeah.
Like the yellow wax.
Yellow wax cap, that's like impossible to get off.
Yeah.
That's fair. I want because if you were to ask beer drinkers like what they would do, they'd probably say more light beers. Because if you're like, well, I don't want to drink a hazy IPA every day of my entire life if that's the only thing I could drink.
See, I can't drink like heavy duty IPA all the time though. Like it's heavy, you know. Like I want a session with some stuff. You know what I mean? I
Yeah,
wanna
so
drink
there's the
multiples.
Pilsners and the
I can't just drink one
Kolsch's. Like
triple
I would like
IPA.
Kolsch's a lot
And that shit just
more.
makes you drunk as hell now too. Like they're
Yeah.
like 10% alcohol.
You like drink when you want to sleep.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's a few Napa wines that make me do that though too.
Yeah.
I do appreciate the alcohol levels on these because
They're restrained, aren't they?
they are. You know, my biggest problem with Napa wines is they release too young.
Mm-hmm.
And you say, oh well, these are great after 6 to 10 years. A lot of people aren't holding on to them for 6 to 10 years.
Right.
And I've been to release parties up in Napa, and they're like, oh, it's 2018, and now we're just releasing our 2017s. You're like, already?
Like, did you just put that immediately into a barrel and hope it soaked it all up with extra staves in there?
And that's one of my big problems with Napa is just they release too young. If they had rules more like Barolo, where they couldn't release till the spring of their 4th year,
That would change the whole thing.
it really would. It would suck for them the first 4 years, but I think their wines would be so much more appreciated even more on a global scale.
I think so too. It's funny to see Europeans come to Napa and then taste our wines and like be like,
the fuck?
like these are cool and they're interesting and I want to taste them because they're not what I'm used to drinking, but they don't love them.
Well, one thing I was
Because they're
reading the other
because
day.
they're too young.
Yeah.
And they're too harsh.
Well, and one thing I was reading recently was a lot of Coopers are starting to have problems with people buying their barrels, whether it's a slowdown and everything. But the fact of the matter is people are running away from using 100% new oak on every single thing.
all
that
the
they
amazing
do.
wineries that I've been fortunate enough to be involved with since I've been to Napa Valley, they almost mimic each other in terms of their barrel program. The ones I've worked for, and that they're a third brand new oak, a third second turn, and a third 3-year oak. And then they recycle the barrels afterwards, or they have a couple neutral barrels
Well,
too.
like,
but
I think you're
most
starting
of
to
them
see-
aren't 100% new French anymore.
Once you get those older generations of winemakers who were in the Parker time that I got to go for the 199, 98 points, and they were all like, "Well, that our neighbor got it. Why is our neighbor
over.
getting it when our vineyards are touching? So I got to do what he's doing to get these points."
That world's over now.
And everybody's
by the way.
it's on its last. It's the death throes.
Number one, Parker's not even tasting the wines anymore.
Yeah, it's the death
Lisa
throes of the
Perotti Brown.
Parkerization, and now I think in the next 2 years the playing field will be leveled out, and now you're gonna have to see people who are actually like really smart about their wine drinking and everything to be like, dude, you got to try this like these. I've never heard of 2 of these sites. I've never heard of it. I've seen Neil a couple times, but the Chimarosa
They don't distribute this shit. Yeah. It's all direct to
But
consumer.
next time I go to Napa, I'm going there.
Dude,
I'm
you're going to
100%
Chimera. You're going to Chimera.
That is fantastic.
It's amazing.
And how do you say this? Bravantine?
Bravante.
Bravante. Dude, that is one of the best, most acidic wines I've had from Howell Mountain.
Yeah.
It is honestly refreshing. Like that's not
Delicious.
a cab that
I think
is
it's also.
tearing my thumb
I think
up.
it's also the fact that I mean, you could answer this possibly. Is it because it's the 13th vintage and it already has 6 years of age?
It's that, and it's the stylistic impression of the winemaker, like the style which he makes, and the time in which he picks the grapes.
And I'll also say, like again, like
yeah, I agree.
from somebody who I drink a lot with my dad, being the bigger stuff, because you're always there. We always drink and stuff like that. It's you drink these big, monstrous, oaky, over macerated stuff from the last few years. Like he still has some silver oak in the fridge and things. That refreshes my palate.
Yeah.
And like that's nice. Like it's nice to have a cab that I don't drink and I go, well, thanks for the cocktail that I just drank. These honestly, this is why when we talk, I always love mountain stuff because that is my favorite wine right there, and it's hard to get.
I think also going back to the oak that we were just talking about, I think quality producers know that they don't need to hide anything.
Right.
When you have flaws in your wine, you want to use 300% oak on it because you can hide all the flaws.
Well, I think the flaws are actually what makes wine interesting and pretty. And the more, I'm so glad it's changing. I'm so glad the Parker thing's changing.
Yeah.
And the reason being is like when you have an opinion that controls the consumer market, or several opinions, maybe Wine Spectator too, and that's controlling things, then everything's tailored to that taste profile, and then everything becomes monotone and tastes all the same.
Yeah.
And so I love the fact that that's going away, and then that producers can actually take a step back from cloaking their wine with things that make it taste one way, and they can let the vineyard speak for itself, and then we can actually be interested in these wines and not just like taste oak all the time. Like they become more transparent and interesting to the sight. Because like for me, like world-class wine, this has always been my thing. World-class wine to me shows a sense of place. Like if you drink it and you taste it and you say that wine could have only been from that one place in the whole entire world because that's the flavor of that place, then I consider that to be a world-class wine.
And crazy enough, the irony is I feel like everybody could pick out Napa Valley wine based upon how overmacerated and how much oak is in the wine.
Yeah, I hope that goes away.
Versus the actual valley floor speaking. And by the way, it's not like this is one of those things where it's like, well, it's one massive hill and it's all the same. Like, dude, that is a crazy amount of like 30 different soils they have throughout Napa Valley. So everything's crazy different, which is really nice. And I like to experience like with the Barbarescos that we have from the Protetore. When he poured me, it was 3 different bottles, and each one was not even remotely close to being the same thing, but it's all Nebbiolo. Mm-hmm. But if I'm drinking Cab, I'm with you on this. I think I would like to be able to think that I could tell you that that's mountain and that's floor, but I couldn't tell you
that's
that's
coming,
St. Helena and Rutherford or whatever. I could just say,
you got to believe that that's coming.
And I hope so.
We're
still
such
a young industry.
We're such a young country in terms of growing wines, and the more that we investigate these soils and we are true to the identity and come away from the consumer mentality of critics and sales, and we really focus on history and tradition, you'll see these wines become so unique, and all these AVAs really, that's what it was designed for in the first place, is for us to be able to delineate AVA to AVA and be able to taste that difference. And it's coming. The oak's going away, and the consumer is talking to each other one-on-one now. Through social media, and like it's more transparent, and that's what I love about technology. I love it.
Yeah, I've got one for you. If you had a vineyard that you absolutely loved, and you were like, it doesn't matter who makes it, whatever, I love that vineyard. Do you have one out there in Napa? Because you've been out there for a while now, and you've worked for a couple, and I could think of some like names and things, but for you, if there was a site you're like, I love that site, that's the one.
Yeah, a single vineyard. The thing is, like, a lot of these places don't share that single vineyard with multiple wineries to be able to see that. Besides Tokelon, you know, like there's.
Yeah, like Tokelon grows for a number of people, but say somebody like, you know, like a Turnbull, like that's their vineyard. They're not sharing it necessarily with other people.
They sell a little bit of the fruit. Turnbull does to a couple producers like Maybach and.
Well, all right. Well, in that case, even if it is a specific winery, is there one thing where you're like, it doesn't even have to be the best. You're like, I was really surprised by how this one vineyard site gave off this thing, and you're like, that it's memorable.
The first thing that comes to my mind in terms of that, and it's the one that I think is maybe the most unique site in terms of the way it always translates its flavor through the wine, is Heights' Martha's Vineyard. Unbelievable. And
Really?
always the background note of this like kind of like minty menthol thing. Every vintage, doesn't matter how the wine's probably
And
made.
where is that
And they've changed
vineyard site?
winemakers over the year. It's in Oakville.
It's in Oakville.
It's in West Oakville, like behind Tokelon.
So it's like kind of up against that. What is that? That the Vaca is the middle, or is that the Mayacamas?
It's on the west side, so closer to the Mayacamas Mountains. back
Okay,
there.
and Vaca
West
is the
Oakville.
east side.
East Oakville.
Okay.
So first time I ever met Matthias, you know Matthias.
Yeah, fucking love Matthias, by the way.
Well,
Shout out to Matthias.
I was
Matthias.
bartending, and it was a Friday night. We're 5 deep at the bar, and I see this hand above the bar with a bottle of wine, and it's a bottle of Heights Martha's,
Yeah.
and he's like, "This is drinking perfect. I need a glass. I need a glass." And I'm like, first of all, you can't bring wine in here. He's like, no, I need a glass. He goes, "Get one for yourself." And it was a bottle of Heights, and Martha's, and that was actually one of the first times I ever had Martha's.
Such beautiful wine. And props to Matthias because he's actually the one that exposed me to a lot of different vintages of Martha's. And he actually took me up here to Napa Valley, and I did a trip with Matthias not so long, a couple of years ago. And we went to Heights and sat down. And this is before the sale went through. Heights is recently sold, so they're no longer owned by the Heights family.
I didn't know that actually.
They were purchased by a farming family and company from like the Midwest or something like that. So it's still in a farming family, which is great. But yeah, Kathleen and all them, they sold the winery.
Yeah, you always see it. Didn't Grace family just sell too recently?
Yeah, Grace sold too.
Everybody gets a check
I
with
can't
two
afford that
extra
shit
zeros.
I love Grace, by the way. I can't afford that shit.
Really?
But that's one of the best wines in Napa Valley,
Really?
in my opinion. Fuck Grace.
I like
family. Knockout wine.
What's funny is coming into this show, I even told John, I'm like, "John, you need to talk to Thomas more than," because usually I do a lot of the talking. And I was like, "You need to do a lot of talking because I don't know a lot about Napa. I've been so
You got to come up there with me, man. I've
I
invited
do.
you. Get up
And-
there with me, man.
We gotta go soon.
Because I've spent so much time focusing on Italy for the last 7 years. I've spent more time in Italy than I have in Napa in my life.
That's crazy.
Mind blowing, right?
It's so close, man. It's a $170 plane ticket.
Round trip.
Round trip.
Yeah.
Round trip.
Yeah.
I know that because
we,
that's what I paid.
we could be in Napa in 3 hours if we wanted to. Get
Yeah.
on a plane, drive up there,
and you can stay at my fucking house, so you won't have to like pay $500 for a hotel room.
Yeah.
So it's up. The
Which is
invite's
funny,
open.
by the way, because every time I take my dad there, the options are these 3 super high-end hotels, or like that one dumpy one, the 3 Palms, right in the middle. Always stay there every single
Hilton
time.
Garden Inn.
There's always one fight happening in the middle with some guy and her boyfriend because he drank too much. It's hilarious. I do love Napa because there's 2 shitty dive bars right smack in the middle of it. The pool hall that's right there,
Bilko's.
Bilko's, and then
But they have such good beer there. They have like 30
dude, the beer
taps.
list is fantastic.
great beer there.
And then across that is a karaoke. It's like a Rula Bula style bar. Those guys that play
so
bands.
Coming back to Matthias on this bar that you're talking about, which is Downtown Joe's.
Yeah,
So Downtown Joe's.
I love that place.
So
I always
we have
go to
this
there.
crazy day with Matthias. Anyone that knows Matthias,
like
he's
across from
he's-
Salt.
Matthias is fucking crazy. He's awesome, but he gets wasted and he has fun, which is why we love him. So we have this incredible day of tasting. I mean, we're drinking like Abacus, like multiple vintages of Abacus with like the owners and stuff. Incredible day, and then we end up end of the night at Downtown Joe's, and Matthias. So this night is like it's like a band night where there's like a band and everything.
Yeah.
Matthias is a really good drummer. Yeah, he's very good at drumming. So we're all wasted having a really great time. And Matthias gets behind the drums, rips off his shirt, ties it around his fucking head, and like blows the place up and like rocks out for like 2 hours, man.
And Matthias is not 20 years old.
Incredible, dude.
That's the thing. I mean,
Incredible.
Like,
I
you
wish
were
I had
so
that shit on
blown
tape.
away. Like, wait, what is this really
I should
happening?
have got that on tape, dude. I was too like
that
invested
is
in like
so
bullshit. But
I've actually had
So funny.
I've had a ton of fun with that guy in Santa Fe at Santa Fe Wine and Cherry Festival. Like,
Super
that
random.
guy's everywhere. So
Matthias.
what he does is he represents a bunch of top wineries from Napa Valley.
He's a broker.
He's the soul of the wine industry. The guy who is really good about slinging stuff. But when you want to party, that guy fucking parties.
Yeah,
He's
but
awesome, dude. He's awesome.
He's built these brands, and he's done such a good job of building brands. And so many people are just salesmen and car salesmen, and they're on to the next thing, where he's actually truly built reputations of these
His
brands.
portfolio is really awesome of the wines he brokers into Arizona. He has the Plum Jack Caden Odette stuff, which does well on its own anyways.
He had
but
ZD.
He had ZD, Frog's Leap, Martinelli, which
Yep.
I love Martinelli wines.
Regina Martinelli.
She's awesome.
She is hilarious.
I have
One of
a
the
picture-
funniest people I've ever met
I
in
have
my
a
life.
picture of me and Regina on Jackass Hill, like
Yeah.
like straight
Is it
up.
really
and
called
down.
Jackass
Yeah.
Hill?
Jackass
Dude,
Hill.
that's
Yep.
awesome.
They called it Jackass Hill because
donkeys.
their father that was farming it, like no one would have farmed something that steep, and so they called it Jackass Hill because only a
okay.
jackass would farm something that fucking steep. It's like the steepest vineyard in Sonoma County. It's like straight up and down.
I figured Hidden Ridge would have been my bets. Yeah.
Like her business card says something like Queen Jackass or something like that. Like
she's
it's actually
great.
like her title. It's got some funny name. I got her card in the back. I'll pull it up.
I remember that one. Yeah.
And Matthias Broker's Heights as well, and he's just great brands. Like, but he's also built those into Arizona like really really well. And props to his business. He's got good business. Yeah.
It says a lot about, it says a lot about building brands. You know, we're talking about the internet and how it's so important to grow these brands. But at the end of the day, it's human interaction.
Yeah, for sure.
You know, sitting around drinking these wines with your friends, drinking them with your buyers, drinking them with sommeliers, and actually enjoying them and not trying to chase the dollar.
Yeah, actually, that was a question I was going to ask for people who are out there and they want to, let's say you're working, let's say you end up like as a sommelier. Are you good with people walking? Yeah, no, that's bad.
Chimarosa.
The
dude.
Chimarosa.
I gotta go back to it.
These wines are
drinking this
knockout, but Chimarosa, dude.
Chimaron's leading.
Crazy.
This one. The Neil is opening up nicely, by the way.
Yeah.
And I'm excited to try the
Go on with
Bravo
your question.
today.
I want to hear this.
So you're roaming the floor, you know, making sure everybody's having their stuff. What is your comfortable level or good level where you will, instead of just walking to a table and doing the cork, oak, pour, where you're like, oh, I like these guys. I want to sit down and talk to them. Do you like when a guest sits there and says, hey, listen, I want you to pick a wine for me? And you're like, fuck, I don't know. Like, now I got to go weird with it. Or do you like them to tell you, like, their story and then you can kind of figure it out?
Well,
like, what is it you want to hear as a somm?
For me, it's always asking questions and listening to responses. And so the first question I'd always want to immediately get out of the way so we don't have to dwell on it is like, well, what do you want to spend on the bottle of wine? Right?
Oh, so price comes in probably first best.
Yeah, I don't fool around with that because I don't care.
Okay.
Like, I want to know. Like, do you want something expensive as fuck, or do you not care about price at all? Or do you want something cheap?
Yeah, because if I walk
Right?
in and say, hey, listen,
So I get a barometer.
I
If they
want to
say
spend $80 a bottle.
If they say I don't care, that's
Well,
a funny answer because like they do care, but they're just trying to cloak it with like I have money, I don't care.
Well, there's
But,
a
like,
difference
they do-
between $100
right.
care and $500 care.
Right,
Yeah.
right. So I try to delineate that first, get that out of the way. They're like, and if they don't want to give me an answer on it, I'm like, well, what do you normally enjoy? So if they're like, oh, money's not an option, I'm like, well, what do you normally like? And they're like, well, I like Opus One. Then I'm like, okay, well, they don't care about money.
Yeah.
They just like they'll spend whatever. Then that gives me a little bit more idea. If they're like, I like Justin Cabernet, then I'm like, okay, well, then they want something maybe that's what
Around the 60.
they would like something a little bit more affordable. So I get the price thing out of the way at first. In that same moment, while I ask them like, what do you normally enjoy? That'll give me like their stylistic choice, like what their palate agrees with. And then I'll ask them about the cuisine. I'll be like, well, what are you having for dinner tonight? Are you having seafood? Are you having steak? Do you want the wine to pair with the meal? Right? Because some people want to drink fucking Cabernet with their sea bass. It's like, and that's okay. And I will ring the register and I will sell you Napa Valley Cabernet at $150 a bottle with your sea bass.
Very lightly done sea bass.
It's all about like asking like little prodding questions, nothing too intrusive, and then trying to get like down to like what they're going to enjoy the best. Never does it enter in my mind my opinion about what I want to enlighten them on, unless they're really looking for. If they express to me, I'm really looking to find something that's like different and unique, and that's gonna like blow my mind, and something that's like for a price point that like is lower than what I'm used to, but that's gonna deliver for the quality. Then I can get geeky with them. So like for me, it's really tailoring the experience to what they want and asking questions and listening.
Do you get that often? Is the guy who walks and goes, listen, I want to spend $100, but I want something weird. I've never had a grape from Greece or southern part of Italy, but like I trust you. I'm going to eat a fish and whatever.
Then I love that.
Usually, most of the time, they're cool with that.
Yes, I love that when someone would give me the autonomy to play around with it like that and then show them something unique. This is a little bit off topic, but one of the most crazy experiences I ever had, not crazy, but like eye-opening experiences I had was I was at Bourbon Steak and one of their executives came in to dine, and super nice guy and everything like that, but I had never like served wine for him before, and he was like my all-encompassing boss. And he said, I went to the table and he goes, I'm having the fish tonight, but I want you to pick out a red wine for me because I don't want white wine, and I want it to pair well with my fish. He's like, just bring me whatever. So I'm like, cool. And then like I step away from the table. I'm like, oh fuck, like now what? Like now what am I gonna do? So immediately I'm like, okay. So I can't overwhelm the fish too much, right? So I'm thinking about something that's like gonna have acid though, because like the fish I think was bass, and like a fattier fish that needed some acid to cut through it, right? but I don't want to overwhelm them with flavor, too much flavor intensity or too much tannin or too much oak or anything like that. So I settled on Giuseppe Vira's Barbera. Was it Barbera d'Asti or Barbera?
You used to love that wine
Alba.
there. I remember you. It was
What an amazing wine.
Barbera,
I mean,
yeah.
Giuseppe's badass too. Those wines are so good, Vira. But
We've been drinking the Riesling like fucking fiends.
super high acid, beautiful Barolo.
Oh, the GD?
I mean, beautiful Barbera, amazing aromatics, not heavy tannin, high acid, perfect. Nailed it, dude. And he's just like, oh, and like he came back like 4 times in the next year to visit, and he's like, send me that Barbera, send me that Barbera. So pretty cool. I got it right, but. Yeah, it's interesting pairing wines for people with cuisine that doesn't necessarily.
Because I kind of want to do that. I would like to go more to a like a higher end restaurant, sit down with the sommelier and be like, listen, here's the deal. I prefer, I'm gonna get this steak. I want to spend $120. Go to work. Like white wine or not? Excuse me. Give me a red wine with that thing, and give me something weird that you've got on your menu that you sit there and it's your thing, and you got to try this. Be weird about it. I don't want like the standard fucking what everybody else gets kind of a thing. And I don't know how to phrase that because I do that with bartenders, and I always get called out on this by A, my girlfriend, and B, a good friend of mine, Brandon. I go and say, what cocktail do you like make that for me? And they're like, dude, fuck you, man. Like, dude, I get that all the time. And like, I figured out how to word it better that they go, cool. I'm like, I like a scotch. I want it to be light because it's summertime. And like, I got it. And then they run off and they come back 5 minutes later. And every single time, super happy about the drink.
It's just a matter of reading your people. I mean, if you got a guy who looks like the stuffy businessman who you know is Mr. Opus One, you got an idea. You see a couple bearded hipsters that are super into wine that want to have something fun. You can be like, all right, how much money you want to spend? I got some cool stuff like Etna Rosso. I got some cool stuff from Southern Rhone. I got something from Greece.
I guess
I've been liking Greece wines, by the way, a little bit more and more.
The stimulation for me as a sommelier was never involved with me like flexing my knowledge or geeking out about the wines, because I really enjoy the business side of things too. So like as much as I enjoyed like giving my preference to people and telling them what would pair good with what, and that was artistic for me, I enjoyed the business side of it as well. And I love the businessman that comes in and buys 2 cases of Opus One at $500 a bottle. I'm like, yeah,
make sure it gives you also a budget to buy other.
It's like great. Like I'm gonna ring the register on that, and then I'm gonna go buy myself like 20 cases
business
of Kermit
party
Lynch
where
next
it's all
week.
silver oak. Yeah, 10
So, like,
silver oaks for the table.
So I enjoyed both sides of the equation. I loved being a businessman, and I also loved being like the connoisseur and like all that.
That's the
geeky
difference
stuff.
about you and how your business was structured. There are a lot of sommelier jobs in America, say Vegas, for example, where those somms are actually working on commission. So it's their job to upsell and sell heavy and sell the high dollar value.
Right.
Like that's how they work. They work for a small amount of hourly wage, and then it's commission, and they're making dollars on every bottle they're selling.
Yeah.
Well, a lot of those sommeliers too don't even direct the program too. And like for example, if you're in like a resort like the MGM, there's like a main buyer, and they have this giant cellar, and they actually share that cellar with like 10 restaurant outlets inside the same resort. So they're not even concerned with the business model of it all. They're just trying to get commissions by selling the most expensive wine.
Oriola has like a master that runs the program, but then there's 9 advanced that work the floor.
There's that too, yeah.
And so those advanced that are working the floor, they're making commissions.
Yeah.
So all they are is they're hitmen.
I suppose
Or hit women.
I was on commission at my sommelier jobs as well, and I would get tipped out and commissioned on my performance and sales. But I never like really gave a shit about that, because I knew that like if I was just honest with the guest, that like
repeat customer
and like
you.
and people that trusted me would like take care of me, and like I would eventually figure out the money part of it. And so like for me it wasn't necessarily about that. I don't know, maybe that's the wrong thing if you want to become wealthy, but I was just like,
a lot of people don't it's one thing about the wine industry is the long game. It really comes down to this is a long-term game, and a lot of people want to get that quick dollar out there immediately. Like I've seen certain wineries get bought up and they immediately flush the market with everything that they can. Dude, I'm amongst what I imagine is 1,000 other wineries in the country who are part of this specific business forum where when somebody gets bought out and they need to quickly sell everything they have, shiners, barrels, whatever, they go on and they just email blast everybody saying, hey, new ownership, we need to make money here. I've got 10 barrels of this super high-end winery stuff, but instead of spending $100 a bottle, we'll give you 2 at $25 a gallon. And you're like, dude, holy crap. And they're just trying to off it as fast as they can to regain that money back, because nobody wants to sell their shit for 10, 15 years because it's a hedge fund that bought it or a realty investment company that bought it. That's unfortunate, too, because there's such great wine that could age for so long for a Napa, and it just doesn't.
So what's been your favorite part of the business? You've worked on the somm side. You've worked on the education side, the sales side, the retail side. I mean, I
Yeah.
think you've covered.
Holy crap, you are a jack of all trades.
The only thing you haven't done, you haven't been a winemaker.
I've touched most of the market. I haven't made wine, and I would never pretend that I could like step into that role. That's I know the process of it, but I'm not a scientist. I don't know the equations and the chemical processes of that, but maybe someday.
Retirement plan.
I think that
Make Klafke cab.
Winery side is so awesome when you're at the estate because you get to be around the plants and you get to be around the nature aspect of it. And when people come to Napa Valley and they visit a winery, they're just happy. They're in a good mood. They're like, fuck, I don't have to be in the cubicle. I'm at this winery.
True.
And I'm
You're
like
in
here.
nature, too.
And I'm in nature and like I'm going to be attentive and listen and like learn. And this is going to be transformative for me. So like it's been so rewarding to work in an environment where like 95% of the people that come up to visit me or are at the winery with me are people that are willing to listen and learn and be open to like a transformative experience. So that's been super, super wonderful. But the sommelier side of it had its perks too. And I don't love the hours and like the nightlife like that and the long hours of being in the restaurant business a lot. But I enjoyed the autonomy to create a business within a business. And luckily, the places that I was a sommelier at let me express myself and be a businessman and have full autonomy. And it wasn't corporate environments where things were chosen for me. I got to like be like, I can buy what I want and give that to my consumer. I loved the business side of it and the sommelier side of it. I really enjoyed the dollars and cents part of it. And then retail for me was super awesome too. Like there's nothing like slinging bottles of wine in a bottle shop.
That's my
It's so
favorite
fucking
aspect.
fun.
Talking to people.
It's
it
so
says like
fun.
all three of us right here.
That's how I met him.
Talking to people.
But Damien, to answer your question, I loved all three of them, all three of the sides, even four if you can't wholesale that I was in for briefly. I loved all of that. But there's all one common thread in every part of the wine business. And it goes back to exactly what you said, which is the most amazing, wonderful, and lovely people that you could ever meet in your entire life are involved with this business on every side of it. And I love the fact that I've been able to create lifelong relationships through my line of work. And that I truly love the people in this business that I've met more than the wine itself.
That's awesome.
I have nothing else to say after that one.
I mean,
It's
I
so
think
true.
on that one's probably the best way to go.
Yeah, I mean that's why you're here today with us. I mean,
Love you guys, man. That's the truth.
I love that. Every single time we have Peter friends on, it's always ends with "love you guys," because it's true.
On that, I want to wrap it up after that because I think that
All
just
right.
sums up everything. These wines are amazing.
Cheers.
Cheers, guys.
I really appreciate you sharing them with us.
This was one of my favorite tastings we've done,
So
like
fun,
hands
right?
down.
So fun.
Thank you so much for bringing these. Honestly,
Yes,
guys,
wine's boss, dude.
the Chimarosa
Chimarosa
is the one.
stole the show, man.
This
So
and I
people
want
can
to make
actually
sure I
try.
pronounce this
Bravante,
Bravante,
amazing.
but this one's opening up so
Super elegant,
nice.
right? And then Neil is great too.
Neil is fantastic. All three of these wines are banging. These are killers out here. The Chimarosa's fun to drink. Dude,
Howell Mountain, baby.
Bravante, it's where it's at.
So let's eat some tacos
Have
and
some
hang out and
tacos.
drink some wine together.
We're
do
gonna
it.
go. We're gonna go visit him in Napa. Maybe we'll bring like the cameras out and video stream.
will.
film through
Absolutely,
his
we'll
little
do some-
thing.
we'll do some work up
We need
there.
to go see the ponies that you need to name before we get there.
They have names. I just fucking forgot, dude.
Oh, they better be fantastic. Thanks everybody for watching, listening.
Cheers.
Love you guys.
Thanks.
Cheers, guys.
Cheers.